I'd like to apply for the bodyguard position. Izuku was utterly flabbergasted. He was just laying down on his bed, and his phone rang. And someone called him and asked to apply for a job. Now, really that shouldn't be surprising, because that's really how it's supposed to go. He was only taken off guard because of the way the last bodyguard applied for the position. Oh, I suppose I could set up an interview. And I'll have to test your abilities. Izuku responded. Give me your name and number. I'll do a background check and I'll call you to tell you the date of the interview. Right. My name is Saibura, the woman on the phone explained. And my number is dash. Wait a minute. Izuku blurted out in shock. As in, that Saibura? As in the former pro hero Saber? Yes. The woman said reluctantly. The very same. Well I suppose testing your abilities is unnecessary then, Izuku said in utter disbelief. No, it's been a while since I was active. It would be good to make sure my abilities are still up to par. Sai insisted, her voice firm and unwavering. Well, if you insist, Izuku responded. I suppose the background check won't take as long then. Your history is well documented. I'm still going to do some research, but everything should be fine. You can come around in a couple of days, and I'll have everything set up for you by then. I see. Thank you. Sai said. XXXXXXXXX. A few days later, Sai came into Izuku's office, for Izuku's first ever interview. Welcome, please make yourself comfortable, Izuku said gesturing to the chair opposite his desk. Thank you. Sai nodded respectfully, sitting down. Sai was relatively young for being a retired pro hero. Being only 33 and looking like she was 20. She had long blonde hair that was tied in a bun. Deep blue eyes, and unblemished skin, would make you think she'd never had seen battle before, if not for her calloused hands. She was wearing a black suit and a red tie. Not something you would normally see a woman in, but it fit the serious way she carried herself. Now, firstly, why do you want to work here? Izuku asked. He'd taken yesterday to compose himself, making sure he could be completely serious, and not fanboy in the face of the former pro hero. As you know, I was a former pro hero. I quit for personal reasons. However, I've spent most of my life training to be a hero, and as such my skill set is limited. Sai admitted. This seems to just be the best use of my talents. I see. Thank you. I consider that high praise. Izuku said, forcing down a bit of giddiness. Alright, next, how do you feel about OPCs? I don't have feelings one way or the other. Human beings are human beings, and should be treated as such. Sai stated simply. Perfect answer. Izuku thought, smiling a bit. Alright, well given how much I know about you, this interview doesn't really need to go on much longer. I suppose we should move on to the test portion of the interview. I see. Well then let's not waste time. Sai said, standing up. Please lead me to my test. XXXXXXXXXX. The test was taking place in the training room, and as they entered the room, they found Kiba, Netsu, and Yami waiting for them. So this is the former pro hero? Kiba looked over her with her arms crossed, looking skeptical. I'll admit she does look quite good in that suit. But I'm eager to see if she can meet our expectations. I can't wait to see her fight. This is gonna be so cool. Netsu was far more openly excited about all this, as opposed to his other two siblings. Yami didn't seem to care much. I hope that my performance will be satisfactory, Sai said, giving them a small, but genuine smile, and giving them a polite bow. I will do my best. I'd hope so. Otherwise, why would we consider hiring you? Kiba asked. I expect you to give 110%. Understood, Sai said. Well, she's pretty good with kids. So that's a relief. Izuku thought. Okay, well then. Yami. If you would. Yami nodded, and turned around, before vomiting a large amount of black goop. The black goop then took form, in the shape of a Goliath. Oh, so that's how those are made, Sai said, trying and mostly succeeding in not looking disgusted. Well, your first test will be to subdue the Goliath, without killing it, Izuku told her. I see. That makes sense. Sai said as she got ready to start. Staying on the other side of the room. Fortunately, I am experienced in that department. Very well. Begin. Izuku ordered. Immediately, the Goliath started charging towards her, its huge figure looming over the much smaller woman it was against. But she stood calmly, not moving an inch, or showing a hint of fear, as the space behind her rippled like water. Boom! Then suddenly, a sword shot out of the ripple, hit the Goliath in the face, and exploded. Rah! The Goliath roared in pain, as it was injured and blinded by the explosion, and it tilted to the side, running past Sai, and into a wall behind her, stunning it even more. After that, more ripples appeared around the Goliath's legs, and more swords shot out of them, not exploding this time, but slashing its legs, and causing it to fall on its side. Unable to get up. I believe my opponent is no longer capable of continuing, Sai noted, still not taking her eyes off Goliath. Shall we move on? Whoa! So many swords. Where did they come from? Netsu asked, turning to Izuku for an explanation. This is Saber's quirk. Infinite blade works. Izuku gladly explained. Buru has access to her own personal pocket dimension, in which exist infinite copies of every sword she has ever seen. She can create portals to this dimension, and pull those swords out of it. Or just shoot them out at high speeds like you saw her do here. That is a spectacular quirk. With an even more spectacular name, Kiba commented, seemingly pleased by her performance. Unlimited blade works. How many portals can she open at once? Netsu asked, his flames burning brighter than normal. About 50, Sai explained. Although the more I open, the faster I drain myself. Why did one of them explode? Yami asked. Well, to put it simply, I can recreate anything I considered a sword. Sai explained. With all the effects and aspects of the original. As such, I have been shown a variety of special swords made solely for the purpose of strengthening my quirk. This includes swords designed specifically to explode upon impact. Of course, I have different types of explosive swords with different levels of power. Right. I've only ever witnessed your full power once. And it was awe-inspiring. Izuku recalled, smiling fondly. For some reason, after saying that, Sai's expression dipped a little bit, before returning to her normal, neutral one. My maximum yield is a bit damaging to be shown off in a place as small and confined as this one. So unfortunately, children, you'll have to wait to see my full capabilities. That is assuming I pass these next tests. I doubt you'll come close to failing, Izuku said. We'll start the next test, but could you dispose of the Goliath first? Of course, Sai said, as a portal opened, and shot a sword at lightning speed, right into the Goliath's neck, killing it. After it faded away, Izuku turned to Yami. You can begin. Yami nodded and started vomiting out more goop. This time a lot more. The goop then turned into a small army of bearing elves that surrounded Sai entirely. Alright, the same rules apply as the last test, Izuku instructed. One question, Sai said before the test began. Are these things susceptible to poisons and toxins? The Grimm are meant to replicate living organisms. Albeit but stronger than your typical person or animal. So yes, but they'd have to be pretty powerful. Izuku explained. I see, Sai responded. That was all. I am ready to begin. Okay. Start the test. Izuku said. Yami nodded, and a moment later, the bearing elves all charged at her. Of course, they didn't get very far, as portals opened up behind them, and a ton of short swords shot into their backs with extreme force, knocking them all the ground in an instant, leaving them at her feet. The bearing elves tried to get up, but they struggled for a bit, before stopping completely, lying helpless on the floor. So she had poison blades as well. Kiba deduced, smirking with satisfaction. Very nice. She's taking them all out without even moving. That's so cool. Netsu said. Well, we've seen your capabilities against both tough single opponents and strong groups of opponents. Now we just need to see if you can take on something truly fearsome, which I know you can, but I'm making sure. Izuku explained, trying not to make a fool of himself. Anyway, the final test has already been set up, and it starts now. And sorry for what's about to happen. Sai's eyes widened as she quickly put together what was happening, and she immediately reacted. She pulled a sword out of a portal, and quickly turned and slashed behind her. She slashed something, and saw something. She assumed it was a Grimm, oozed darkness from the wound for a second before it closed up. Sai then heard the creature jump back, and created more portals behind it, and shot swords out at where she assumed it was. However, the swords flew right past where she thought it was, as the Grimm had ducked down, with the swords flying overhead, right at Sai. Sai makes a portal in front of her, and shoots a sword out of it, deflecting the sword that was coming at her. And yet, a second later, something hit her, pushing her back and holding her against the wall. Ack! Sai cried out, as she felt a hand holding her throat and choking her. She shot another sword from below, cutting off the invisible extended arm and freeing her. It seems this one will be a lot more trouble, Sai thought. Taking things up a notch, Sai opened a ton of portals on both sides of the room and started shooting out swords pretty much everywhere. Suddenly, the hound became visible, ripped off its own head, and threw it at Sai. The swords hit the hound's body, sinking into his flesh, but the head managed to slip through one of the openings between the swords. Its head flew at Sai, teeth bared at the former hero. Sai jumped back, avoiding the head, as it landed on the ground. Then she watched in shock, as the creature began to regenerate its body. I see. So that was the point of this exercise. Sai thought as she opened a large number of portals around the still regenerating hound. Kaboom! The swords all hit the hound, creating a huge explosion, engulfing the hound completely. Izuku and the children shielded their faces and eyes from the light and the wind that came from the blast. When the explosion died down, and the smoke cleared, all that could be seen was black smoke, if now dead hound, dissipating into the air. Izuku gave melancholy smile. You killed it. You never said that the rules of the previous test applied to this one. And what's more, this opponent was one that both constantly adapted and regenerated. Sai explained calmly. It was never an opponent that one could realistically capture or non-lethally incapacitate. Or at the least most opponents would lack the means to do so. Therefore the purpose of this test was to see if I was willing to know when taking a life is necessary to protect the children. Izuku nodded, and his smile vanished. I despise the thought of killing. And if it was up to me, I would never, ever take a life. But, as a father and caretaker, my children must always come first. While I would never go to it as a first resort, I have to acknowledge that there are some opponents that are simply unable to be contained or captured. Therefore, I need the people charged with protecting this place to be able to do the same. Sai closed her eyes and considered her next words. I have taken the lives of villains before. It is a very heavy decision to make, and should not be made for a shallow cause. However, protecting children, that is a cause worthy of taking a life. I see. Then there is no need to test you any further, Izuku said. You're hired. Sai smiled and pulled out a sword. A golden blade, with a bright blue hilt. Then I swear to you, upon my blade, I will protect you and these children. No matter the cost. Yes, you will do quite nicely. Kiba smiled. I am happy to welcome you as part of our army. Handle our forces with care, and protect your queen and her siblings with pride. Sai gave a brief chuckle. Of course my lady. Can I keep one of the swords? Netsu asked. Unfortunately, the swords will not remain here for much longer, Sai explained. A few moments after she said that, the swords she had summoned disappeared in a bright blue light. Whoa! What happened to them? Netsu asked, running over to where the swords once were. The swords I make are not of this world. They belong to the world inside my imagination. A world of infinite swords. When I force them through the portal here, I'm forcing something that should not exist into existence. Sai explained. As such, they can only be here for a certain amount of time, before they fade back into their own reality. The same goes for anything that I would drag into that world, aside from swords that is. Interesting. Well, you can tell me about the details of your quirk in our wrap-up discussion, Izuku said. We'll talk about pay, accommodations, healthcare, terms. All that. Very well, let's take this back to your office, sir, Sai said, as she and Izuku departed. XXXXXXXXXX. A couple hours later, the two had worked everything out, and contracts had been signed, cementing Sai as the bodyguard for the Midoriya Foundation. Alright. So, do you have any last questions or concerns? Izuku asked her before the meeting ended. Sai paused for a moment, before speaking. You haven't asked about why I quit. I didn't feel a need. Izuku dismissed her concern, but that didn't seem to sit right with her. The HPSC has gone to lengths to make sure I would have difficulties finding work elsewhere. Sai continued. To be honest, I applied here not just because it seemed like a noble cause, but also because I was hoping you'd be kind enough to overlook that. It's not hard to tell that a lot of the discouraging things the HPSC has said about you are exaggerated, Izuku explained. I'm sure you had your reasons for quitting, and I won't ask you if it makes you uncomfortable. Although, admittedly I have put together my own theory with the information I have available to me. My apologies if that seems a bit invasive. Sai sighed. No, it's perfectly reasonable to be curious and come to your own conclusions. Although, I would like to hear about your theory. There was a minute of silence, as Izuku took a second to think about what he was going to say. Well, I know you were taken in by the HPSC at a young age and spent most of your life training to be a hero. Izuku started. Eventually you gained your hero license and became the leader of a team of heroes. Consisting of yourself, Saber, and your teammates, Lancer, Berserker, Caster, Assassin, and Archer. You performed very well. With all of you being extremely powerful heroes in your own right, and as a team you were even more effective. Then, all of a sudden, Lancer and Berserker were announced to be dead, Caster was revealed to be a villain, and Archer and Assassin disappeared off the face of the earth. And lastly, you quit being a pro hero. Sai remained quiet, listening intently to Izuku's words. My theory is as such. Caster had been secretly doing something, I don't know what, that she was afraid of you all finding out about. Izuku continued. Berserker's quirk was notoriously hard to control, and if something set him off emotionally while it was active, then it could be disastrous. I'm guessing Caster sabotaged you all, making Berserker go out of control, which was the reason for Lancer's death. You and Berserker were known to be good friends, but considering his power, and how much damage he could do, you would have no choice but to put him down, while the other two took care of Caster. Once again, Sai remained silent. Not confirming or denying anything yet. I have no idea what became of Assassin and Archer. I presume they're still alive, and were just heavily discouraged, leaving without going through the formalities you did. Izuku said. Now as for you, I have little doubt that the events of this tragedy had shaken you a bit. But even then looking at your behavior then, and even now, I doubt that'd have been enough to get you to quit outright. Something was said or revealed, or done, by someone, that either heavily damaged, or destroyed your faith in heroes outright. That's the only thing I could think of, as to why someone who spent their entire life in the pursuit of one goal, would suddenly quit. Once Izuku finished giving out his theory, there was a long, tense silence, with Sai looking down the entire time. Eventually, she pulled up her head, a serious look in her eye. It almost alarming how much of that you managed to put together. I suppose, in that case, I'll fill in the blanks. As it turns out, Caster was working with someone known as All for One. Izuku's eyes widened. All for One? Sai's eyes widened as well, seemingly shocked that Izuku knew about the mysterious villain. However, her expression returned to her serious one, and she continued the story. Yes. For whatever reason, Caster was working for that villain, and when we discovered this and tried to apprehend her, Berserker suddenly attacked us and killed Lancer with a surprise attack. He didn't seem to be himself. I don't know what Caster did, or how she did it, but somehow she was controlling Berserker, forcing him to fight us. He was too strong. Even stronger than normal. And, I killed him. Now it was Izuku who stayed silent, giving nothing more than a sympathetic look, not wanting to show any disrespect towards this woman's loss. As you said, Archer and Assassin took down Caster, although she was significantly stronger than normal, and she was using her quick in ways we've never seen before. Sai continued. And then after after everything was finished, I gave my briefing to the H.P.S.C, and they didn't treat Berserker's death with the respect it deserved. Ah, so that's what did it. Izuku thought. Some more things were said, and in the end, I decided I couldn't continue working for them anymore, Sai said, doing a very good job at restaining the lingering anger she felt just remembering this occurrence. And I quit. I see. Izuku gave her a saddened look. I'm sorry you had to go through all that. Berserker was a hero worthy of respect. I remember his contribution to ending the Insatioi. It's a shame the HPSC couldn't do the same. Sai gave a sad smile, recalling the event Izuku spoke of. Yes. A shame. Another moment passed, before Sai's expression became deadly serious. When I mentioned All for One, you reacted like you knew that name. Izuku's eyes went wide again, as he realized he'd given himself away. Ah. Yeah. I suppose I did. And, I'm guessing the HPSC didn't tell you a lot about him. They denied he existed, Sai explained sternly. No matter how much I asked, and insisted to know to truth, that denied me at every step. It was part of the reason I quit. Izuku bit the side of his cheek, hesitating a bit. And I'm guessing you want me to tell you about him. Given all I've been through because of him, I think I deserve to know, Sai said. Izuku sighed. Well, I can't disagree. But I need you to keep what I tell you, to yourself at all cost. It's heavily classified information, and the only reason I know all this is because of a powerful friend of mine who's not too great at keeping secrets. It's pretty much a state secret. Well, no, it makes a bit more sense as to why they were so adamant on keeping me in the dark, Sai said with notable disdain. I swear I will keep my lips sealed. Very well. Izuku got ready to start explaining. To put it simply, All for One is the oldest and most dangerous villains to ever have existed, dating back to when quirks first began to emerge. His quirk, All for One, allows him to steal the quirks of others and use them for himself, or even transfer them to other people. Sai's eyes widened. Wait, then that means Dash. Castor must have been given quirks by All for One, Izuku told her. My guess is that she gained these quirks in exchange for favors. He could practically hear Sai's fist clenching as rage bubbled up to the surface. Currently, we think he's dead, Izuku said. All Might battled the villain and smashed his face in, but the body was never found. And given that he's had a couple hundred years to gather quirks, Dash, it's entirely possible that he could still be alive, Sai concluded, looking mighty upset, to say the least. Right. Izuku nodded. But no one's heard anything from him since his supposed death. So either he is truly dead, or he's biding his time. Izuku knew that wouldn't be a satisfying answer. Heck, it was probably the least satisfying answer. But it was the truth, and she deserved the truth. So he's the one responsible for all this. He certainly sounds like a monster, Sai said, once again trying to contain her anger, but only barely doing so. Is it truly fine to leave his fate uncertain? Shouldn't they be doing everything in their power to make sure he's truly dead? And if not, make sure he actually dies? Probably, but up until now, All Might was certain he killed him, Izuku responded. And the HPSC is content to assume he's dead. They likely won't make a move unless they see something pointing towards him being alive. And even then? Sai let out a very frustrated sigh. Typical. Well, if he is alive, then he's bound to show up eventually. And when that happens, All Might will take care of him. That I can assure you, Izuku told her. From what you've told me, this man appears to not fear death via aging. If that's the case, then All Might may not be around to fight him, Sai pointed out firmly. Izuku nodded. We are well aware of that. However, there is a plan in place in the event that transpires. Right now, there is a hero being trained at UA, who is destined to surpass All Might. If All Might can't finish him off, she will. That a lofty expectation. How are you so sure of this? Sai asked, with suspicion. Well, that secret is something I can't disclose to you. My apologies. Izuku told her. Unfortunately, that secret is not only not mine to tell, but it's also much more important to keep hidden than the existence of All for One. I'm really sorry, but I'll just need you to trust me. I see, Sai responded. Thank you for telling me what you could, and for telling me what you couldn't. I admire your honesty. It confirms that working for you was the right choice. It's nothing to admire. You deserved some closure, Izuku told her. Now, then I'll give you till next month to gather all your stuff and bring it here. You can start working here with the other guard at the same time. Other guard? Sai asked, raising an eyebrow in confusion. Oh. Izuku's eyes went wide as he realized he forgot something important. I didn't tell you about her. I'm so sorry, it must have slipped my mind. It's fine, Sai reassured him. Just tell me what she's like. Oh well. Izuku tried to find the best way to word it. She's very unique.